Well, welcome everyone to this exciting panel about finding more money. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I cannot believe that it's November 1st, which marks the start of Financial Literacy Month. But as we know, people need a lot more than financial literacy. They need to know how to find more money, and that is what this panel is all about. So we're so excited to have you. I would love to know where you're from. If you want to type that into the chat as we're starting the introductions. And also, we really want to answer what's on your heart and mind. And I know when it comes to money issues, not everyone wants to throw that into the chat. So feel free. I'm going to be checking my direct messages on Instagram, on Facebook. You can send us a line at info@kelleykeehn.com. So any burning questions you have for this incredible panel, I invite you to send those. Great. Thank you. Calgary, Edmonton. Some of you are shy. Not sure where. Oh, from BC. Amazing. So good. Thornhill, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And we hope that the conversation will keep going. Brazil, Eric. Okay, so without further ado, let me please introduce our incredible panel. And I will put some links as well once I've made the introductions to all of these gentlemen. So first off, we have who I like to call the financial rock star of our industry, none other than Rob Carrick from the Globe and Mail. Now, Rob is a journalist that really gets to live his beat. He's a personal finance columnist with the Globe and Mail, and he's attempting to make sense of the world of money. And I'm going to throw in his newsletter link. You definitely want to get on that list because he definitely does that. He's married with kids and he's constantly figuring out ways to spend and invest intelligently. And he's asked the same questions that would apply to his own experience and gets those answers. So his columns really are about simplifying, not complicating. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks, Kelly. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. I've had a lot of chats with you, virtual and in person. They're always fantastic. Now, we also have Eric, and I'm going to hopefully say your name right, Monteiro, from, he is a Senior Vice President, Group Retirement Services with Sun Life. And Eric leads, he's the largest provider, Sun Life is the largest provider of workplace savings and retirement platforms, covering over 1.3 million Canadians and over 125 billion in assets. And his team is responsible for developing and delivering a wide range of products and services to meet the unique needs of Sun Life's plan sponsors and plan members. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Great to be here. Very excited to be talking to this group about some very important topics.
Yeah, great to have you, Eric. And I know Rob actually covered one of Sun Life's stats that we're going to dig in today, that Canadians leave on average $3 to $4 billion on the table every single year in not leaning into their matching program. So that's a little spoiler alert of one of the things we're going to be talking about. And last but definitely not least is Stan Samole. And Stan is the CEO of Family Tax Recovery. And he's also they're also the sponsor of this chat. So glad to have you, Stan. Now, Stan, they conduct a 10-year personal tax review. So basically what they do is they go back on your taxes and they see if you've missed any benefits or credits or the tax laws have changed, and they only get paid when their clients receive a refund. So welcome, Stan. We're going to dig much more into that as well.
Kelly, thank you so much for putting this together, and I'm thrilled to be part of this panel.
Fantastic. So great. So, Rob, I'm going to throw it to you first because I bet your email is going crazy right now. It's been survey after survey. Yesterday, the Nanos research came out saying that just about half of Canadians feel worse about their financial situation. Equifax today with, record amounts that people have on their credit cards. What are the biggest stressors? What are you hearing from your readers?
Mortgages are the biggest stressors. It is a shock to people how much mortgages are going up. They just never dreamed of that this could ever happen. I mean, there was always economic boilerplate out there saying, of course, we're in an era of low rates. Rates could rise. Historically, these are exceptionally low rates. But, people go by, you've heard of recency bias. It's what we've seen recently that guides our thinking about what's to come. And people just were not prepared for this sort of thing at all. And, the amount mortgages are going up is tremendous. I did a survey of readers of my newsletter recently, and I'll be reporting on the results, but I was surprised how many people reported their payments were going up by $400 to $500 or more per month. And I think when you couple that with inflation and its impact on groceries and its impact on gassing up your vehicle, and this winter on heating your house if you have natural gas as a heating source, I think we are taking money away from families in every which way. And you know what? I think some hard decisions are going to have to be made, and I think we've already seen a bit of that. But I think this winter is going to be a tough one financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And not surprised that that's what your readers are saying. And I got Loans Canada to crunch the numbers for me too, just to illustrate last week. If you had a $100,000 line of credit at the start of the year, with the last increase last week, that means an extra $3,500 per year. Like, that is a shocking amount for people to have to weather. And I know that a lot of people have much more than a $100,000 line of credit or on a variable rate mortgage. So thank you for setting that up. Eric, what are you hearing from plan members? And what do more of what do employers want to see to help their employees out? And National Payroll came out with their recent survey, revealing that on average, Canadians are worrying about their finance or looking after their finances for up to 30 minutes a day, costing the economy over $40 billion. Curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you, Kelley. And as you mentioned, we work mostly workplace plans, right? So we see what working Canadians are thinking and feeling a lot. And they're feeling pretty financially insecure. Saving and planning for retirement, which oftentimes is really far away, is complex and can be a bit overwhelming in the best of times. And to Rob's point, we're certainly not in the best of times. I mean, you look at the economic woes we've been going through, you look at the global geopolitical complexities, lots of health-related headwinds, plus the market volatility, which we're all feeling right now. And it's really hard for Canadians. Now, a couple of stats that we get from the workplace: 2/3 of Canadians are very concerned or very concerned about day-to-day cost of living. That's, just to give you a sense, 11 percentage points from last year, which was already a high kind of history norm. And in fact, paying for day-to-day cost of living is now the number one concern among Canadians. And almost 90% of people expect rising rates and inflation to cause their day-to-day expenses to actually go up and become less affordable, right? And of course, they worry over time that's going to affect their ability to save for retirement. And you have to remember that we're coming from a 13-year bull market, right? It was a time when most investments people made, even if they made it themselves, did well. You kind of could almost do no wrong with where you put your money. That's of course not true anymore. In fact, there's a lot of volatility in asset prices, and you couple that with sort of the day-to-day expenses, inflation, et cetera, and employees are much more concerned about their ability to really save for the future, which of course is what we're very focused on. And that actually shows, to your point on how much time people spend on it. Now, interestingly, people actually spend less time engaging with their finances at the workplace because they don't want to see. Usually when the markets are going well, people actually want to see their balances, how their investments are doing. They want to engage. Right now, they don't, which has a silver lining to it in that this is the worst possible time to be touching our investments when the market is down. And thankfully, we're not seeing a lot of that. We're seeing people stay put.
Thank you, Eric. Very interesting insights. Stan, you've told me how much people fear anything to do with the CRA. I've actually heard a lot of readers saying, a lot of my readers have been reaching out saying that if they've owed personal or corporate taxes, CRA has actually been really great to work with them. And your service is very unique. So, when it comes to people just turning a blind eye, maybe they haven't filed taxes or they're just, scared about that part of their financial life, what insights can you offer people?
It's not just a Canadian problem, Kelley. There's a worldwide culture of being afraid of the tax man. And nobody in Canada likes getting brown envelopes in the mail unless there's a check inside. So that's the way we're brought up. But in truth, the Canadian CRA is more friendly than any other country that I've heard about, because the CRA allows you to go back 10 years. I don't know of another country that allows this. They allow you to go back and adjust your taxes. And that is done to create refunds. In the United States, you're allowed to go back 3 years. In the United Kingdom, you go back 1. If you go back 2, you get audited. So we're very fortunate, and I hope it continues, because there is a lot of money at the CRA that Canadians just have to claim. From what
Yeah.
we've seen, I can tell you, based on having done almost 100,000 tax reviews, we can extrapolate that there's around $30 billion available at the CRA to Canadians, money that belongs to the people. So it's obviously tax-free. It's there. Just have to go get it.
Excellent. And we'll dig into that a little bit more. I see Tamara already has a question. We will definitely dig into that, Tamara. And yes, anyone, by all means, throw your questions in the chat. Like I said, feel free to direct message me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or send an email over to info@kelleykehn.com, and we will keep an eye out for all of those. So just continuing before we get to some of the questions, Eric, I've been speaking to a number of HR executives, CEOs of companies. I've got a workplace financial wellness program, and, they're telling me heartbreaking stories, like employees are cashing in their RSPs to afford, their kid's dentist visit or to pay for their prescriptions. Like, what do you want them to know about not taking advantage? Maybe you can talk to us about that free money, that $3 to $4 billion that people are leaving on the table, but also what are you seeing as maybe some things that you wish you didn't see plan members doing or the employees doing to hurt their long-term financial prospects as they're trying to get out of these very expensive times?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I'll get to the $3 billion, but to your point, it's not the only thing, right? We see, and we do see, by the way, people using these vehicles sometimes in the way they're not designed for, and it's unfortunate. Usually, it'll hurt them, right? So I'll talk about 3 primary things that we see, again, working Canadians do that aren't ideal. The first one is misusing vehicles. The RSPs, whether group or retail ones, are really meant for Canadians to save for retirement, right? They're long-term savings vehicles. And if you're going to take money out, and by the way, I have to make a parenthesis and say, ideally you wouldn't, the power of saving for the future for retirement really is when you let the money in there and that returns work for you and compound over the long term. But of course, I understand, people do have needs, and they do, again, to your point, they have lots of expense they have to cover. So if you do need to make a withdrawal to address that, TFSAs, for example, offer much more flexibility. Their contribution room gets reinstated every year after withdrawal. And so it's a much better vehicle for that. There's also the question of which TFSA do you take it from, group versus retail, because, you could have both. Now, I'm obviously biased, of course, because I do work in the group space, but, I do believe group TFSAs and group vehicles in general offer a few advantages. The first and the obvious one is very competitive fees. The fees are negotiated by employers, and they negotiate quite hard, because I'm on the other side of that table. And then the second thing is, these funds are very carefully selected. They're curated, if you will, by the employer themselves. We help. There's usually a consultant or an advisor involved helping get funds that really are focused on the long term. And then, of course, there's also the convenience of payroll. I mean, the fact that it's deducted and you don't actually see it through has a bunch of benefits. First of all, you don't have to worry about it. Secondly, you do end up adjusting your expenses with the take-home pay, versus if you take the money home and then decide to invest. It's a lot harder to go through that extra effort, particularly at a time when you're having expenses you weren't planning on. And so this really also helps drive consistency. And TFSAs are underutilized overall. They're particularly underutilized in group. Just to give you a couple stats, of all the plan members that have access to a TFSA with their employer, only 7% are participating, which is nothing short of tragic, right? And the majority of these have less than $5,000 invested. Whereas, for example, in retail, the average retail balance is about $25,000. And again, these folks are paying higher fees and have a less curated investment profile for them. The other thing we see is investment matching, employer matching still income on the TFSAs. Almost 90% of contributions to TFSAs are by the employees alone without match, which again, it's terrible because members who do hold TFSAs tend to have higher balances, almost a third higher. So it really is a missed opportunity. So that's the first error, is people misusing those products. Again, not only the RSPs and TFSAs, but missing an opportunity to take advantage of group plans, which can be a lot better than the retail options for some people. The other mistake we see is procrastination, right? Whether it's due to inertia or, some of these choices can be hard and intimidating. People do procrastinate and not act on, particularly on those things for the future, which is why we're so keen on auto enrollment, which basically means just, when you join a company, you automatically enroll in your employer plan, and ideally with the top of the matching. So you're already included in the matching. You can always opt out. But people don't. I mean, if you just look at ourselves, Sun Life actually did that for new hires a few months ago, and we went from about 80% participation, which was high to begin with, to about 95%. And now we're actually seeing many other clients, sponsors really, who have 50, 60% participation rate go up all the way to 97, 98% because they've included all enrollment. Now, a few people still opt out, call it 2 to 3%, and that's perfectly fine. It's their right. But the difference is now people are actually saving for the future. And of course, to your point, there is the biggest mistake, which is just not maximizing your employer plan, your match. I mean, regardless of which savings vehicle you use, this is free money. Like, there literally is no better way to save than just getting the employer to contribute for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about, having that money taken right off your paycheck so you're not seeing it, which is brilliant. Leaning into those matching programs, and also the fees. I just really want to stress that generally what you get inside an employer program, if you bought exactly the same thing at a bank or with a financial advisor, it's going to cost you more. And that fee reduction could mean tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime more in your pocket. So Eric, and we'll talk about tips, but what's one thing if people aren't leaning in? Do they contact their HR person? What should people who are listening do?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of resources for sure at your plan. So I would start with that. You can talk to HR and they'll know for sure what's available for you. Your plan, record keepers, we are the company that supports your employer, will for sure be there and have resources. I can share some Sun Life resources in the chat. We have about 42% market share. So chances are you are a Sun Life group member, or at least 42% of you. But the other companies will have similar resources as well, and that's the first thing I would do, and really understand your plan, because again, we talked about the matching, and that's of course free money. You can't beat that. Like, you get 100% instant return with no risk. There's investment risk, of course, on the investment, but no risk on the dollars. But there's, again, these other things can be less obvious. The fact that the funds are very well curated, competitive fees, and all the tools available to you as well. So I'm going to post some of the links here in the chat just so people could have available to them.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thanks, Eric. So Rob, I'd love to dig in a little bit more about mistakes, what you're seeing, where people can find more money, if it's bank fees, credit card fees, what have you. Just what are you hearing, and where do you think people are leaving free money on the table? Oh, you're muted, Rob.
I think some of the biggest problem really is today is, I think culturally as a society, we have an overspending problem. And I think the pandemic kind of accelerated that because we were at home and we weren't spending much in certain areas. So we picked where we could spend and we spent there, and then things opened up, and you can still see that restaurant spending is way above pre-pandemic levels. Travel spending is way above pre-pandemic levels. The whole renovation boom has calmed down, but you talk to any renovator, they're still not sitting there waiting for calls. I think that there's, for a variety of reasons, marketing, social media, whatever, we are all spending at a maximum velocity. And that is a lot of the reason why we've got so much debt and so much stress about that debt. So I'm thinking, what can people do to address that? And I think we've been talking, for about 12 months now, because that's how long inflation's been a factor, about cutting costs and being a better shopper and using apps and coupons and stuff. And I think the people who've done that are the ones who are going to do it. And I think the chances of finding miracle solutions for everybody else using these tools has probably been pretty much tapped out. So I think people are going to have to sort of look at their spending and make some tough decisions. Just in a micro sense, I was looking at some stats about people cutting their subscriptions. It was basically asking, do you expect to cut one of your subscriptions, like your streaming services? And a lot of people said, yeah, I think they probably will. But I wonder how many are actually going to do it. You know, they're going to go down from you might have accumulated a few during the pandemic. How about picking one or two that really work well? And then when you get bored with them, just sub them out and get some new ones. But it's a matter of actually cutting your costs. I mean, I think cars always amaze me how much people spend on cars. You know, the average car payment's like in the $700 range. And the loans that people take out, even with these payments, are like 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know. I think maybe selling a car might be a big difference maker for a household. You know, try to get by with one car. Try to. I think you need to kind of think in terms of blocks of like thousands of dollars. How can I save a block of $1,000? You know, and I think making a big change with your vehicle could be one way of doing that. Everybody's trying to get a good vacation in after the pandemic lockups ended. How about you make one vacation a year? You take it down a couple of notches in terms of how grandiose the trip is. I think we need to think in terms of bold strokes here. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at the small savings. They're there. But I don't think those are going to be the big difference makers. And I think most of the people who are open to those things probably have already tried them.
Yeah, very good points. And, just a note on the subscriptions, the numbers that I found was that Canadians on average are spending $273 a month on subscriptions. And some of those you may use, but I'll put my hand up to say that I subscribed to everything during the pandemic, and I'm having a heck of a time actually finding those subscriptions, finding what credit card it was on. So what strategies have you found, Rob, like for people to actually take action, like whatever it is? Is it putting it in your calendar and having a reminder to do it? Because like you were saying, inertia, like you're not just going to do everything today. Like what are some small steps? And you and I are always talking about those small steps.
Yeah, you know what I would do? I'd get out your last 2 or 3 credit card statements. And if you get them online, just print them and then take a ruler and go line by line by line and see, what is this? What joy did that bring me? Not too much. I won't do that again. You know what? There's that streaming service we subscribed to a year ago. We watched all the stuff. We haven't turned it on in 6 months. Pick up the phone while you're looking at this paper and call them up and say cancel, or go online and see if you can cancel it that way. I do a line by line audit of your spending over 2 or 3 months, and I guarantee you'll find that there's a lot of things we spent money on that we didn't really enjoy that much, and that let's try not to repeat that mistake.
I think that's absolutely genius advice. Like I know myself as a business owner, I have to do that when I'm filing my personal taxes, but not too many individuals do that. And just lastly, before I throw it over to Stan, I also want to point out something as simple as, I got on, I'm going to throw this in the link in the chat right now. I love the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. They have amazing tools and resources and calculators. A lot of people don't realize they're out there. And just for fun, I was doing an Instagram series on how to afford to buy more shoes a few weeks ago when fall hit, because people, they still want to spend, Rob. So I wanted to help them find some ways. And I was like, let's just take a credit card that has a $10,000 balance on it, and you're just paying the minimum payment, and you're in a 24% interest rate, and you're just making the minimum payment. If you just did one thing, and I just did this on the FCAC calculator, and got into a 12% interest rate card, which all banks have, you didn't pay anything more. Over the life of that, you would actually save $4,000. So I think sometimes too, when you're aware, when you get out of the inertia and you start to crunch the numbers, or like you said, Rob, line by line, look at the stuff you don't want to look at. A lot of times the solutions present themselves for you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rob, for that. Lots of great things to think about. Stan, when we're talking about leaving money on the table, obviously this is something that you look at a lot in trying to get returns for people. And on average, I know they're around $3,000. You've told me before that single moms, those with kids in school, business owners, there's a lot of opportunity there. But why, what's holding people back if there's potentially thousands of dollars there for them from the CRA?
Well, as I said before, the first thing that's holding people back is fear of dealing with the CRA. And especially for people that are comfortable in their lifestyle. I don't want to get audited. Don't open a can of worms at the CRA. We find that most of our clients that sign up, therefore, are middle class or Canada's lower income people that need the money more desperately, and they'll sign up online. Of course, as people get more knowledge about it, what this is, this 10-year tax review, it should become more mainstream. Most accountants don't know that you can go back 10 years. Most people never heard of this. And the reason is because it takes an accountant hours to go through 10 years of your returns. And maybe there's no refund, or maybe a small refund, it doesn't pay. And so the only people that have heard of this 10-year tax review, excuse me, are really the fabulously wealthy, because they have an upside potential of a refund that could make it worthwhile. So what we also find is besides fear is that people don't want to have they're afraid that maybe they're going to owe money, or that somehow having your taxes looked at will increase what you might owe, or afraid that it'll come back to bite them later on, kind of thing. But really, it doesn't happen, because here's the process. You file your taxes. Now you're allowed 10 years to go back, and you say, oh, in 2019, I forgot to deduct my tuition for my kid in college. I forgot that I could apply for the Carrick credit for any clergy of any religion in Canada that's accepted. I forgot that taking care of my parents, I may qualify for the caregiver credit. I forgot I'm a single mom. I might qualify for the working income tax benefit. I forgot that, and on and on and on and on. There's dozens and dozens of things that people, I mean, look at the tax code is a book this thick, and it's a combination of numbers, Greek, and diagrams. And it's absolute gibberish. No regular person can make heads or tails of the tax code. So you need to have an accountant or a company that is doing 10-year tax reviews. I think maybe it's a misnaming. We should say 10-year refund reviews. So the process is you go back, you find something in 2019, I forgot to take the tuition credit, for example, or I forgot to deduct the cost of my tools for my trade, or the percentage of my apartment or my home that I use for office purposes, whatever it is. So we file, or your accountant or you file an amendment just to one line in 2019 of your taxes, because all the entries are numbered with numbers, right? So that one particular line, you put in an amendment. Government says yes or no, and that's the end of it. And 99% of the time they say yes, by the way, unless we're saying something that's not true. And some people can do that. We've had a case where people want to claim medical expenses and then can't come up with the receipts when the government wants to see them. That's not good for their relationship with the CRA. So people are afraid of things like that. But in truth, if they say yes to the amendment, that's the end of it. We've never had an audit come from filing an amendment. If they've said yes, that doesn't trigger an audit. What triggers an audit is when you file your taxes. Either they're going to pull you out of a lottery, or they're going to see something they don't like. So there's a lot of opportunity, and it's definitely worth looking at. And you mentioned the average is $3,000. That's today. And I mentioned close to, it's actually more than 60% of our clients are middle class and lower income. In truth, if we're doing the dentists and the lawyers and the professionals and the employment groups and so on, it's going to be closer to $5,000 or $6,000. That's what we've learned. The typical refund, you should know, is only a few $100s, but we get some every day that are $10,000 refunds or $20,000, whatever the case is. We know of one family that we got last year was $56,000 in refunds. How much money to leave on the table? It's unbelievable. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's certainly worth looking at, especially if it doesn't cost you anything to have it looked at.
Absolutely, Stan. And I should add that you're able to do this because of AI and smart technology. This isn't you line by line, your company line by line doing this.
Yeah, when we started the business, the first few years, we had accountants. We had quite a few accountants, and they were pouring over it line by line. And they can do approximately 2 to 3 10-year reviews a day. With AI, you can do hundreds. And we don't need that many accountants anymore.
Amazing. Just to answer Tamara's question from earlier, is there a risk that you'll actually owe CRA more money if you go back on someone's taxes?
The only thing we do is we file amendments if it's going to create a refund, nothing else.
That's super clear. Super clear. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Stan. Rob, I'll throw it back to you. So, you know, when we're talking, and I love your line by line, I think that's so important, but are there other things that people may not be aware of where they're leaving free money on the table? So for example, you know, maybe you're a high income earner, you're barely making ends meet, but you've got unused RSP room. And actually, if you sat down with an advisor and they crunched the numbers, it might make sense. Like you said, sell the car, get an RSP loan, you're going to get enough of a deduction or what have you. Or there's some things that are a little bit more complex that aren't so soundbitey that people should be aware of?
I'm going to take a different tack on this, and rather than talk about ways to find bits of money here and there, I'm going to suggest that you go out there and get a raise this year. That could be the best thing you do for your finances. You know, the economy is a bit weird right now. I know we're heading into a recession, most likely. We've had this frenetic activity in the past year or so in financial markets. But the job market is very tight right now. And in a lot of sectors, they need people. They don't have enough. And this goes down even into retail. And I mean, I just heard about a restaurant in Ottawa that's offering a dental and medical plan to its wait staff. Okay, that's pretty radical. That gives you an idea how much people are needed and how desperate employers are. And there is an unprecedented opportunity to go out there and ask for more money. And if your boss won't give it to you, to go out there and find another job that will. It may just be as simple as saying, I'm talking to this other employer about a job, and your boss goes, oh, well, we'd really like to keep you. Can we, if we were to give you a raise, would that make a difference? So we look at we often look at the expense side of the ledger, how much is going out, and how can I reduce the amount I'm paying? I think in 2022 and probably the first half of 2023, we have a unique experience to look at revenue coming in via your paycheck. And I think it is almost negligence not to explore in your work, in your company, in your area of employment, what can I do to get more money? And if your employer won't talk about money, maybe there's other aspects of your compensation that could be addressed that will de-stress your life. And it won't be maybe a monetary value, but it'll have some sort of emotional, psychological value. For instance, the ability to work at home, to time shift, more health benefits, that sort of thing. There's many different ways to negotiate on salary and compensation. And I think that, you know, a couple of years from now, we're going to look back at this period and think what a sweet time it was for workers. And it's going to end. And a harsh recession may do the job. But right now, there's a window open. And I strongly encourage people to take advantage of it because, like I say, it won't last.
Yeah. How hesitant or interested are you finding people are in asking for a raise? Like, is it a polite Canadian thing? Are they doing it?
I find particularly among younger people, absolutely. You know, there's this awakening that I'm making this much. I'm not sure how much my fellow workers are making. I'm going to open up a dialogue with them and try to get some information. One recruiter was telling me that what you really want to do is go to your employer and saying, how do you set my compensation? How does it fit into the organization? Let's talk about my contributions, what I'm doing now, what I could be doing. Open up a dialogue. You know, if we were to go back a few years before the pandemic, employers had a lot of leverage. There were more people applying for jobs than there were jobs. And now the tables have been turned. You know what? Look at the restaurants near you, the grocery stores, the other retail outlets. They're desperate for people and they are paying up. So even if you're an 18-year-old working part-time, I would say, how much more can I get? What else can I get? If this company and this store doesn't want to give me more, what about the other stores in the mall where I work? It's a gift to workers right now what's happening, and I think it's as important to solving the financial difficulties in households as the cost cutting and the finding of money in other places. I would say they're equally important right now.
Yeah, very valid point. And we saw yesterday an unprecedented, the BC government approving, what was it, a 52% increase for BC doctors? Like, you hear those kinds of numbers and just think what's possible when you hear that.
Yeah, there, you know what, it's going to vary quite a bit from sector to sector. But I think that everyone has to investigate what's happening at my company. Talk to your coworkers. Say, have you heard about anybody going to supervisors and talking about pay increases? How open are they? What are they saying back? I mean, the strategy is not to go there and say, "Oh, inflation's terrible. I have to pay so much for groceries. I need a pay hike." That is not going to cut much ice with your employer. But if you say, "I'm doing an important job here, and here's my contributions, and I want to build my career with the company, but I'd like a little bit more of a financial commitment from you at the same time," I think you can have a chat now that you might not have been able to have a while back.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Eric, can we circle back to those 3 to 4 billions of dollars that are left on the table? Like, what are you seeing? Like, what is the average amount? Like, I want to let people kind of know, like, a friend of mine who was actually a manager at Sun Life was like, can you imagine you got a letter at the end of the year that said there was $2,300 that you didn't take advantage of? Like, what kind of numbers are we actually talking about for the average individual?
Well, it's hard to do the precise average because, these are over 10 years. Here's what we see people contributing, not contributing. But, you can do rough math and say, if the $3 billion is divided by 10 million people, you're talking about $3,000, right? So it can be quite material. This is over a 10-year period, but it can be quite material, particularly if you consider that it compounds over time. And again, I can't stress enough, there is literally no downside to that, right? In fact, I think Rob's got a great point that employees have a lot more power than they've had in a long time. And employers are, and we hear it all the time, employers are looking at ways to contribute more. Again, they'll be hesitant oftentimes to just give you a straight up salary increase because there's a risk that it actually drives inflation, which is, a big part of the problem in the first place. But they are looking at, can we do more in terms of benefits, whether it's health benefits or retirement benefits. And so being able to push for that, and actually being able to push for a match, not only take advantage of what's there today, but, have a conversation. Like many plans, for example, and we're advising employers all the time to avoid that. Many plans have a wait period. So it might be 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years before you can actually contribute. We've seen 10 years, which is crazy when you think about it. Which actually, by the way, makes no sense because, ultimately what happens in practice is if you start a job, especially if you're young in your career, and you set your lifestyle, to Rob's point, and you start spending, including that 10% that eventually you would like to save for the future. Well, it's really hard. I mean, if you go to the average Canadian today and say, I want you to live with 10% less, it is very hard to do. But if you had set up your lifestyle without the 10%, because that was being put away into a retirement fund, then it's a lot easier. So we're also talking to employers, and they're quite open to it. Can they start contributing? Can they allow employees to contribute and provide the match right away? Right? Because again, to your point, it could be material, certainly overall, but even at the individual level.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eric. That's a lot to chew on for sure. Stan, a question that came in for me was from an entrepreneur saying that they always use a tax preparer, sometimes an accountant. Is there anything potentially left on the table for them? Is it worthwhile for them to check it out?
Many larger refunds come from people that use accountants. The average refund we get for dentists is more than $10,000 because they can make more than that in 2 hours working. It's not such a big concern. They see their accountant once a year, sign a document or do it digitally now. And the accountants are very knowledgeable, but business is often driven by how many clients you can push through the system. So they may not have the time, and the client may not have the time to dig deeper and see if there are things being left on the table. Remember a few months ago, the CRA, there was an article that the CRA had over $1 billion in unclaimed checks, uncashed checks. I can tell you from experience, there's much more than that in RRSPs. People are just leaving their RRSPs on the table, over contributing. and they can just take the money out. And there's many things like that, that if you just look, take the time, it's worth it. On the other hand, accountants, people with a team of accountants can do a great job, or one accountant can do a great job. We have a friend of mine from Quebec. Years ago, we did his review, and he's an 8-figure kind of guy. We found him $100, and he was very happy. But it varies for everybody, and if you make a mistake by not claiming something, chances are you've been doing it for all 10 years. And to not look at it, that 10th year is gone forever. So it's best to do it and set up a system and keep doing it and doing it. And it doesn't matter if you have an accountant. We find plenty of refunds for accountants.
Thanks for answering that, Stan. And we had a comment come in from Natalie on Facebook. Thanks, Natalie. She says an easy start might just be logging into your CRA account and selecting uncashed checks. Yes, you can do that. They will let you know. And she was pleasantly surprised that she had $100 there. So minimal effort. Yeah. So checking family tax recovery, checking CRA, really, really important. Rob, you already gave us a great strategy of, going through our credit card statements, asking for a raise. What is one other thing that you would really love, like one simple thing, like Dr. Oz with Go Eat the Olives? What's one thing you want people to do this financial literacy month?
I think you need to examine all your spending, and whether it's a budget or it's looking at your credit card statement, or it's how much cash you take out at the ATM to last you the week. I think you need to figure out where all the money is going. Because I think we need to work sort of thematically here. Like to look at one thing in isolation might be modestly helpful, but I think people need to we need bigger strokes here. So I think it's a matter of whether you sit down at the kitchen table and you write out all your expenses for the week, and then you start to think, okay, what could we come back on? What was too high? What is causing us trouble here? And I think if you're depending on how much stress you're in, you are going to need to figure out things to cut. And I'm going to say this is controversial, but one of the things people might need to cut is savings. You know what? I don't want to see people take a permanent holiday from saving for retirement or for emergencies and what have you. And if you're in a plan at work, leave it alone, for God's sakes. But if you're doing your own savings and you're putting money in TFSAs and RSPs, it's okay to take a break and reroute that money to your day-to-day expenses. And I would much rather see people forego a year of RSPs and TFSAs than have a debt on their credit card. 20% debt on the credit card, and you're going to make maybe 5-6% in the TFSAs and RRSPs. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking, though. So when you're looking at where your money is going, it's going for the fun things and the necessary things, and you've got to decide, maybe we have to cut some necessary things as well as some fun things. It's everything should be on the table.
Very, very valid points. Giving people permission to maybe step away from their financial plan till things settle down a little bit, I think is so important, Rob.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot. We're in tough times now. There's going to be good times again. You're going to get, like, down the road, you'll get promotions. You can increase your savings. Then you can make up for lost time. You can work an extra year in the workforce to make things up. But in the here and now, we have to get people on firm ground, something that they can feel. My spending is better in line with my income, and I can feel more comfortable. We all know about the mental stress that accrues when people are worried about money. It can infect everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And Christine popped a note saying, note to everyone, be careful with online calculators that they don't account for the income trajectory that most women follow. And 70% is a terrible assumption for the cost of living. She kind of goes on to make, I think, a really valid point. And Rob, you and I have been on many panels talking about the need for advice at certain times in your life, maybe bringing on someone like a fee-only financial planner that can, not just look at your work plan, not just look at your taxes, but also really understand what these calculations mean, because one slight error is a big issue. And if anyone on this call or watching afterwards would like to engage with a fee-only financial planner, Rob has painstakingly created an incredible spreadsheet that you can either email him or myself, and we'll pop it over to you. Someone that, yes, you pay them either hourly or by the hour. And no, I'm not one, and none of us on this panel are. But there are times in your life that it may make sense to reach out to someone like that. Do you want to comment at all, Rob?
Yeah, I do. I would also like to add that there are nonprofit credit counseling agencies out there that are an excellent place to go if you feel like you are spinning your wheels trying to get your debt under control and you need to talk to an expert. You may not need to take further action. You may just need to help with organizing or budgeting. I would definitely just Google your name of your community and nonprofit credit counseling. Go in there and talk to them. And I think it could take a load off you. You know, these people are experts at navigating the problems you are having, making ends meet and getting your bills paid on time. And if things are out of control, they can help you minimize the damage. So that's a kind of advice that I would say is for emergencies. And if you want to plot your way to a more comfortable financial future and get questions answered, you know, I have all these debts. I want to save for retirement. I want to retire at age 60. Do I have enough? Am I saving enough? What if I stop saving for a few years to build up to get rid of my debts? How would that affect my long-term health? Yes, a financial planner, a fee-for-service financial planner can help you. They charge hourly rates, or you can they might pay you for one particular job, say a lump sum. And a lot of them are old school. They want to do your whole financial plan from top to bottom. But increasingly, and I encourage you to ask for this, you could just say, I just need a micro look. I just want to talk about housing affordably, having kids, getting rid of my debt, retiring at a certain age, and they can scale the cost and the amount of interaction you have down to your needs, and you can make it affordable that way.
Super great advice. And as you were talking about the nonprofit credit counselor, thank you, Stacy, popped that into the chat. So appreciate that. Absolutely. And why not take all the free advice that you can get? A friend of mine that's an insolvency trustee even says, hey, call him anonymously. You don't even have to give your name. Like, if you're in real financial straits, take that help. And to you, Eric, for some final words and one thing that you would like people to do. I mean, looking this morning just at Sun Life's resources and tools, phenomenal, like leaning into your employer program supplier, if that's the right name to call provider, and what their tools are. I think that's part of cutting through the noise for Financial Literacy Month, is really figuring out what resources are out there and using them.
Yeah, for sure, Kelly. So I'm actually going to pick two things, not one. One is to really maximize the value of your employer plan and your employer support. And it's not, by the way, the matching is obvious, and we started with that. But to Rob's point, there's a lot more that you can and should expect from your employer. And actually, a lot of times, and we do provide those services too, they will provide support and linkage to credit counseling services. They will provide sometimes, and it's a new thing, but many employers now provide a matching to debt repayment. So it's not just for savings, like they'll actually match every dollar with certain conditions to repay your debt. Because again, they don't want you to be in financial trouble either. It makes you less productive as an employee, and it makes it harder for you to have a great career. And so more generally, maximize your sponsor or your employer plan. Again, match is obvious. These other benefits, and of course, taking advantage of the savings if they're right for you. The second point is actually tied to Rob's point, which I agree 100%, is define your goals. And your goals may well mean that it's not the right thing for you to save over the next 3 to 5 years, but it may mean it actually is, because if also you wait until you're debt free and you're 45, well, at that point it might be too late to start saving to really have the retirement you expect. So having a balanced view of your goals and what's right for you, and again, making sure you're not getting into that to save, because that doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, making sure you do have a financial plan that gets you to the long term is absolutely critical. And actually, we find, by the way, to throw one more stat at you, that people who have a financial plan or at least have set their goals tend to actually save 25% more than the ones that don't. So it really does make a difference. And the last thought I'll leave you with is, look, saving for the future is really like working out. Consistency is key, right? You can't just do it once. You have to actually be consistent. And so start early and save often, again, notwithstanding the points around that and making sure that, you really are taking into advantage of all those things.
Fantastic. Yeah, those are great takeaways. 25%, that's phenomenal. And I personally have not heard of employer programs matching debt repayment. So Just goes to show you to really dig into those plans. Thank you, Eric. Stan, parting words. What's one thing you would like people to do other than, of course, head over to your website?
Sorry. I want to talk to the employers. What are you doing for your employees? What benefits are you providing? What Eric has described as some fantastic stuff. But what else are you doing? You're getting them a gym membership? You're getting them a coffee card? Why don't you give them access to money that belongs to them that can make a substantial difference in their life? For someone working in your warehouse who gets a $1,500 refund, all of a sudden you're talking about paying off tons of debt. Or for some people, buying the food that you need and the clothing that you need. So there's more than 20 million taxpayers in this country. And we haven't even touched the surface. As I said, nobody's heard of this 10-year refund review. But employers can make the difference. I don't know why we don't have everyone at the CRA who works there undergoing a tax review. They're all moms and dads like us, like you, like everybody who works at Sun Life or the Globe. And to not look, we have an obligation. Our obligation is to seek every opportunity within the confines of the Tax Act. To do any less than that is leaving money on the table potentially. And I would say it's close to half the people in this country that pay taxes probably have some money sitting, waiting for them. And the employers, the unions, government, those are the people that need to take this on and educate their employees. And by the way, you buy a coffee card for them, it costs money. This doesn't cost you anything. So it just makes, it's our fault for not doing a better job at getting the proper word out there and explaining it properly, because it's new and people, like I say, are afraid of the CRA. And we have to all do our part to try to change that. We have a very friendly CRA and very positive legislation in a country that we live in that nobody else has. So to not look just makes no sense to me.
Well, that makes sense, Stan. Thank you so much for that parting word. I threw up all of the links again for Rob and Eric and Stan at Family Tax Recovery. So thank you all. This absolutely flew by for the first day of Financial Literacy Month. I hope that you took away some tools and resources and food for thought. I know, Rob, I'm definitely going to print my credit card statements out. I wish I had an employer benefit program, Eric, to go to. I don't, but that's all right. We'll keep spreading the word to people to do that. And definitely we'll keep our conversations going too, Stan. So thank you all. If you know someone that this could benefit, by all means, reach out to us. We'll make sure that you get a link to the recording afterwards. And all of our experts, I'm sure, are available to connect on LinkedIn. If you have questions, let us know. We will do our best to get you the appropriate information. None of us are financial advisors or planners, but we definitely have a lot of resources that we want to get into your hands to help you feel more prosperous as we go through very expensive times coming up. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our incredible panel, Rob from the Globe and Mail, Eric from Sun Life Investments, and Stan from Family Tax Recovery. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.